Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week I talk with Eli Goldman, an attacking midfielder with Minneapolis City Soccer Club in the USL League 2. We talk about what it's like coming home to play with the Crows each summer, heading back to New Hampshire to play for UNH in the fall, and balancing team and personal success on this week's Who the Folk podcast. But before we hear from Eli, this podcast is supported by the Afternoon School and Midrash Shah at the Talmud Torah of St. Paul, offering online supplementary Jewish education for students in grades 2 to 12. Great Jewish education from any location, now enrolling for the fall. Learn more at ttsp.org/as-m. Eli Goldman, welcome to the Who the Folk podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You are a midfielder, forward, attacking player. I've sort of seen you all over the field in that regard. But you play for the Minneapolis City Soccer Club. You're also a redshirt sophomore, or going into your redshirt sophomore year?
Junior.
Oh, so you're a junior at University of New Hampshire.
So yeah, I'm going to be a senior, but I have 2 more years of eligibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
And part of that is because you started, well, you sat out your first year. You didn't play your first year, but also with COVID and everything, that kind of screwed up everybody's college eligibility.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm sure that's sort of an interesting thing to try to figure that out.
Yeah. It's weird these days because there's a lot of guys that are way older than they should be coming back for 5th, 6th years, and it's changed the whole thing.
It's all within the rules right now of NCAA sports.
Yeah.
So you're playing at the University of New Hampshire during the school year, and the summer you're playing for Minneapolis City, which is in the USL League 2, which is the 4th tier of the U.S. soccer pyramid, if you will.
Yeah, it's so confusing with all these different types of leagues these days, but I think it's like 4th tier. It's typically a lot of college guys, and no one's signing any contracts. And then the next league is when people start signing contracts and lose eligibility for college.
Okay. So, which sort of leads to an interesting question of, you get to play this sort of, it's minor league. Is it considered minor league? Is it considered semi-pro? What's the correct terminology for what playing for Minneapolis City is?
I think Minneapolis City as a whole is more of kind of like a semi-pro type team, but playing in the USL 2 is more of, I think they call it like path to pro. And it's as I said, a lot of college guys who I think often are looking to play pro. Sometimes we'll get some older guys, even on our team. There's a couple guys who are out of college who are playing.
Okay.
But yeah, it's everyone, especially in this league, there's a lot of people with different aspirations trying to, make it through the U.S. system.
Sure. And so for you, as somebody who's also playing in, has a college season, you'll go back to Durham, New Hampshire in the fall or late summer to prep for the season, and the college season is a fall sport. So you'll go back, but this is basically just this is an incredible way to keep in shape for the fall season, because it's you don't have to find a field to work at, or do all the running on your own. This is all stuff, your training program is organized by a team.
Yeah. No, it works really well too, specifically for myself and I think a lot of Division I players, because our coaches put pressure, specifically our coach, he wants all of us over the summer to play for different USL 2 teams.
Okay.
So we'll have guys, there's 4 or 5 guys on our team who are in North Carolina. We'll have guys staying around the New Hampshire area, guys going out to just play for clubs just on their own and stay with host families. So it works super well for myself, and then Rory O'Driscoll, who's also a UNH guy, because we can get to come home and play USL 2 just, in our backyards for a team that both of us have been involved with for years, and I've played for. This might be my 3rd year now. So it works out great in that way. And I think all of us understand too that, we love playing at a high level in the summer. I think there's a lot of pride in putting on the Minneapolis City jersey, but also it's just a way for us to get to top fitness by end of July and start a preseason.
So is that sort of your season here with Minneapolis is going to be we had started texting, the behind the scenes for people. We started texting about trying to do this you were still in New Hampshire. You still had finals coming up, and then moving back home and getting, sort of ramping up for the Crows season. And so you're here through the end of July then?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
When does the USL season go through?
I think the finals is like end of July or early August, because I know we had a couple guys who were in the finals last year, and they've had the finals, went home for a day or two, and then went straight to school for preseason.
Oh, wow.
So it was a quick turnaround, and I think,
ramps up really fast.
Really fast, yeah.
But you're coming in great shape. Like, you're coming in ready to go with your college season.
Yeah. And I think, too, it's trying to find the medium of, being really competitive right now, wanting to win, wanting to play a lot, but also understanding that we have to manage our bodies, and going all out for 2 months right now, and then popping into preseason, which preseason is, it really ramps up quick. And the season, as it is, a 3-month season, is incredibly brutal. I mean, we're traveling midweek, and so just understanding all that and how to, manage our bodies is a whole nother task at hand.
And often in college, you're playing 2-3 games a week every week.
Yeah, normally, about 2. And I know they're trying to make a big change to the whole college system, but right now we'll sometimes have a midweek or end of the week, and then 4 or 5 days later we have another game.
And playing, and that's the other thing is people see college sports and they think a lot of times football or basketball, where you're flying everywhere, and for the non-revenue sports like soccer, and most of the sports in college are non-revenue sports. That's not the case. You're busing from Durham to far-flung America East rivals.
Yeah. I'd say especially because of our conference. There's some conferences, the ACC, they travel more. Some of the, big popular conferences, but with American East, it's all, New England type area schools. So we bus. I think we get on a plane to go play UMBC, in Baltimore. That's our one. And then we'll have out of conference. So we go to Maryland for our opener this year. So that's a flight.
Oh, that's a big time. That's a big time soccer program.
Yeah. So that would be a good way to open up. And then we have a couple a Cali school coming to us, a Florida school coming to us. So there's flights there involved. But if we're in conference, we're only, we're busing almost everywhere.
So the life of a student athlete is not all that glamorous.
Far from.
Okay, so go back a little bit. When did you start playing soccer? Obviously, you probably, I think a lot of kids sort of start early and they're doing, soccer, they're doing t-ball, baseball, they're doing a bunch of sports. But eventually to get to the level you're at, you've got to sort of you got to specialize. You got to that's your year-round sport. When did that happen for you?
Yeah, for me, I started, when 5, 6, whatever, rec soccer. And then I think by the time, so I was playing soccer and hockey pretty competitively, I'd say, until end of 8th grade. Going into high school, 7th grade it might have been. And then that's when I pretty much just chose, that I enjoyed soccer more for several reasons, and then really just focused year-round. I was going year-round on both, but just really, focused in on that. And I was always, hockey was kind of more of a second sport. Just, I think it's good for everyone to play several sports and stuff growing up. So, and then, I kind of locked in on soccer, and that's when it all kind of became more and more serious.
And I think every high-level athlete, you listen talk about the sports they play growing up, nobody specializes at that early an age.
Yeah.
Short of maybe gymnasts, because that's just a different sort of sport. But team sport type athletes, you don't see people specializing at a really young age.
Especially in the U.S. I think in Europe, it's a whole different,
Sure.
Just the way those guys lock into soccer at 4 or 5, and then they're, playing with that same academy till they're
right. The setup, obviously, professionally, and from the top of the pyramid all the way down, it's just a very different setup here than it is in Europe.
Yeah.
Which academy or youth program did you play in growing up?
So I played Minneapolis United growing up, since, traveling soccer all the way up. And then my senior year, I switched to Minnesota Thunder Academy.
Okay.
And it was just because that's when coming into my high school time, that's when academies were becoming more and more serious.
Yeah.
And so I stayed with traveling club soccer until senior year, when I realized the best thing for my development would just be to do academy and skip out of high school soccer.
Okay.
And now, I mean, I look back at some of these kids playing now, and it's crazy how much things are changing. And even 4 or 5 years, the kids before me, when academies weren't a thing at all, and now they have these MLS academies. There's Minnesota United Academy, just experiences that I didn't have, that we didn't have. So it was a tough decision, because I think there's pros and cons to both. And now I think it's becoming more and more clear, the kids who are, signing professional contracts and becoming pro are really starting in these MLS academies, which weren't a thing when I was younger.
Is that good for the sport or bad for the sport?
I think that it's really tough because of how the U.S. soccer system is so different than how I think in Europe it's really good for the sport, and I think here it's so different because of the way that our soccer system is built, and I think that it adds so many challenges to players, families, and the whole soccer culture, having so many different options and no clear right option. Yeah.
So where did you play? When you played at high school, where did you go to high school?
I went to SPA, St. Paul Academy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that a hard decision to decide to stop playing your senior year? Because senior year, like, people sort of put senior year on a pedestal, especially athletes, right? Was it a tough decision to step back and say, that's not what I'm looking for right now?
Yeah, it was super tough, especially because, I love all the kids on my team. I love playing for my team. I loved my coach, and I had a pretty big leadership role there. And so to leave all those kids to just, play for one team for 1 year, that it's not like I cared that much about all those people and those relationships, because it was new people in a new place. So it was really tough, and I think that a lot of, high schoolers have to make that decision a lot, or did back when I was playing, and it's super tough.
So how, obviously, when you're playing sports at that level, the sort of the push-pull on other aspects of your life becomes pretty strong, right? Obviously, growing up Jewish, was it hard to sort of do the sort of typical Jewish things, if you will, when you're trying to also do that at a higher level? Did you have to make the choice, or did you try to fit it all in?
Yeah, I never felt much of a strain because of that. Might just be because my family's not that religious. So I know now, even just on my soccer team at UNH, we have a lot of religious or different religious guys. We have, I'm the one Jewish kid. There's one Muslim, some Catholics, and people who take their religion very seriously. It does have an effect. Even just thinking of the one kid who's Muslim practicing, Ramadan, and how that affects that month and how you perform and dealing with that. So for me, growing up, it didn't really have much of an effect. But that's probably just because of my,
Sure. I mean, and everybody's upbringing is their own, and everybody's religious practice is their own also, right? So they're all going to handle those things on an individual basis.
Right.
So did you, I remember talking to a professional hockey player who was Jewish, who was like, I chose not to do a bar mitzvah because I was too serious about hockey, and I didn't want anything getting in the way. And obviously he's playing in the NHL, so that panned out okay for him. Was that, obviously, I mean, hockey and soccer take up a whole lot of time, so does the bar mitzvah process. Was that something, did you go through that? Or?
Yeah, actually, I think that's funny when you say that, because I did this. I didn't have a bar mitzvah, and I think it was a mix of different things, and now looking back at it, and when you say that, I do think that it just wasn't something that I wanted to spend a ton of time doing, and it could have been with soccer ramping up a lot, and my main focus being on that, and me thinking, that's like, the main priority in my life. And I do think, maybe if that wasn't as important to me then, maybe that would have changed, how I went about that. So, but yeah, at the time I didn't think, I'm not doing my bar mitzvah because I'm playing soccer, but, looking back now, it does, take a toll on, it's a time commitment. And so if I might have just been, my priorities are on soccer right
Sure.
now. Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, you talk about the time commitment. Like, we know people who their son had been at the Minnesota United Academy. Now he's playing at Shattuck, and it is a whole family commitment.
Right. Very
To
much.
to play at that level in any sport.
Yeah.
It is a whole, like, it's not just, what's right for Eli to it's part of it.
Yeah.
But it is a whole family. The whole family has to buy it.
Yep. Oh, 100%. And I think, too, I mean, there's, a lot of times people will just think of, the financial burden or all the driving or, it's messing up family meals and all that stuff is super true. I also think that it can take a mental toll on people in the family, too. I think just like, I think about my mom, and as I've, become more and more serious in soccer, which is not something that I think she ever cared too much about or knows much about. I mean, her knowledge is growing in it. But even now, like after, I have a tough game or I'm going through a tough spell, it takes a toll on you and the way you go about, your day and your mental health in that way. And I think that takes a toll on, your family and my mom, too. And so after my senior year of high school, I went to Spain for a year to play and also just to, be in Spain. And I ended up living with the host family. It was a great experience. And that whole experience, especially at the beginning when I knew nobody, I didn't know the language. It was very, like an isolating experience, was tough for my mom as well, knowing, I'm going through that. And a lot of it has to do with because I probably wouldn't have gone, if I wasn't playing soccer. And so I think that doesn't get mentioned much, but I think it, has a mental toll on family members and the people around you too.
Absolutely. Okay, so you went to Spain. What was that experience like for an American kid playing soccer in Spain? Because I am a huge soccer fan, and I there are still times where you read stuff online, you listen to podcasts that talk about it. There's still a level of respect that American soccer and American soccer players don't get.
Right.
And Spain is one of those very traditional soccer countries. Yeah. And they're phenomenal at it.
Yeah.
So did they respect you as a player, as an athlete, or were you just like a guy taking up space on the team?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think that that I definitely had to earn respect because that was, I think, probably what they assume when I came in. This American kid who doesn't speak any English is coming in on trial for this team, and I think the big thing that they realized or people often don't think is that there's a lot of Americans that can play, and it's not just strong, big, fast guys, and especially myself, who's not the biggest guy or the strongest guy, and to realize that I can play. I remember thinking, so I went on trial with one team, and I ended up signing with them for the first half of the year, and then I got seen by another team that was in a division higher, and they essentially signed me, so I played with them for the second half, and I went on trial with them for one day, and I remember that first day when I went on trial, we were doing all these technical things, and I remember, thinking, obviously going in a bit nervous and stuff, but as soon as I started, I just stopped thinking about it and started playing, and there was a good feeling to realize that all these, Spaniards around me could tell that, I did understand the game and I could play at the tempo they were playing at, and I did have the technical abilities to play at that level. And I think it just feels good, obviously, from a personal standpoint, but also for them to understand that, there's good players all around. And I think that that was just a cool experience in that way. And it wasn't just, I could be brought on this team because I'm a fast, athletic American who's going to work his ass off. But it was, because I could play the way they wanted, and I grew so much from it, and probably struggled in many, many moments, which has helped me a lot,
Yeah. So the language barrier being what it was, if they could see that if you could play, does the ability on the field and just sort of the understanding of what's happening on the field, does that sort of transcend language?
Yeah, I think that, there's a language barrier, there's always going to be, and I think even just from the beginning, I walk in the locker room and I'm silent, and some people are saying what's up, but there's no depth to the conversations at all. And I think that, right there it adds, because if you can't, create relationships and or just that type of comfort, feeling that type of comfort by just having like a small conversation with someone, can affect your mental abilities, and which obviously, can take a toll on you playing.
Yeah.
And so I think just putting that aside for me and just understanding like, this is part of it, and I don't need to have a long conversation or feel comfort or like validation before, from just having a conversation. And if I just play, we can create a relationship that way. And I think figuring that out and slowly coming to terms with that helped so much. And then I think once trust grew on the field, then these players really tried to, understand and talk to me off the field. And that's when I created real relationships. My obviously Spanish improved, but also because they spent the time to try to get to know me, and we found a middle ground in the language barrier.
Nice. So was the decision to go to UNH, was that made before Spain or after?
That was made during Spain.
Okay.
So I was in touch with them before I went to Spain. And as I said, one of my buddies here was playing there, and so I'd been in touch with the assistant coach there when I was leaving for Spain, going into Spain, and then I think I committed before, when I was still with that first team. Okay. So I still had, 6 months in Spain maybe after.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why UNH?
So coming out of high school, it was really, that was a big thing for when I went to Spain, is I don't think I was, like, there wasn't any school that I was like, I really want to go here, or anything that I felt there was just the mutual interest in. And I wanted to make sure I had that wherever I was going, somewhere where I really wanted to go. They wanted me. I could really see a good future. And also I think that in college soccer, it's hard to find a good program, a healthy program with good coaches. I think there's a lot of, really toxic programs. A lot of people are transferring in and out.
Yeah.
So with my best friend, who I'd played with my whole life, and he had gone there for a year, and he redshirted his first year, so he wasn't even playing.
Right.
And he really put in, said good things about it, and said good things about the program and the culture. And to me, that's all I really, needed to know. And once I knew that, then I was getting more and more interested with them, and then it was pretty easy for me to just say I'll give it a try. And I think I'm very happy I did.
That's great. So you have 2 years left to play.
Yep.
Have you thought about what comes after that? Do you try to forge something in soccer, or do you go a different route?
Yeah, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, if we're on this podcast, I'd say, oh, for sure, I'm trying to play professional soccer. But I think just with all the ups and downs, going to Spain, spending time, at UNH, just growing and realizing there's so many other things that I do want to do. Mm-hmm. And so that's not me fully saying I don't want to play, but I think that there's guys who are very, narrow visioned on just professional soccer, and that's what I want to do. And I think, that's great, and I think it's super good to be focused on that, but also can hurt you in seeing all the other things going on and other things that interest, you. And so for me, that's been the big thing, is if something did pop up and it seemed, ideal for different reasons, I would definitely not say no. And I think that I want to keep playing for a while. Yeah. So there's that, but also there's other places I want to go, things I want to do. And so just kind of taking it day by day is kind of where I'm at right now with it all.
Well, and you got a couple years left to worry about it.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah,
which helps. So are you going to graduate then this year, or is it?
So I'll graduate next.
So 23.
23, okay. And then it's kind of deciding if I'm going to do my fifth year at UNH, or where I'm going to go with that. There's a lot of guys that come back, do their 5th years, and then there's also, I don't know. So I just have to figure that out, and same thing. I'm just taking that day by day.
And there's a lot. There's a lot of options.
Yeah.
for sure with one more year with the Wildcats, and then who knows, right?
Yeah.
You could grad transfer, you could do another year, you could start your master's there. Like,
Yep.
it's a lot of things you can do with that.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
So far this season, I know the Crows have, it's been a bit of a slow start for the squad. You've got 3 goals this season?
Yep.
So, part of the thing we had talked about it before we started recording is that, and it totally makes sense to me, that part of the struggle, I would think, was that you're all coming from different colleges from all over the country, and you got to gel as a team pretty quick because there's not a lot of lead time between getting in and the season, because the season is pretty compressed.
Yeah. No, yeah. So I've thought a lot about it, especially because, we were off to a slow start. And I think a few months ago, before the season started, and we're hearing all these guys are coming back and playing, and it was super exciting for us all. It's, essentially all these Division I soccer players who are currently playing, coming back and playing, for their hometown team, which we didn't always have in the past. And I think that's just because, we moved up a division. And so it seems super exciting. We'll throw all these guys on the field. It's just a lot of talent, and things are going to work out. Mm-hmm. And that isn't exactly how it's been. And I think that it's, a learning process for us all, and understanding kind of what Minneapolis City is and why it's been so successful in the past. And it's not just because it's had the most talented players in Minnesota, but it's because it's had a lot of guys who buy in, and a lot of guys who have built it to be what it is. And from this transition year, we've lost a lot of those guys, just guys like Matt Elder, Stiggy, a lot of Will Kidd, a lot of these older guys that kind of built it to be what it is. And so I remember when I was 19 and I came into the program, and I was one of the young guys, and I just stepped in, and the culture was already there, and it was pretty easy to just step in being one young guy. And now it's like we have all these college guys, everyone's trying to kind of do what they do best, and it's just a lot of talent, but there's no we're trying to figure out what the culture is. And so I think it is definitely slowly improving, but I've been in touch with some of the older guys, and even just Matt Elder, and him being like, it's even for myself, like I need to now look at myself as more of a leader, and an older guy, which I'm not used to and wasn't used to because, typically that's not how I've always led. And so just understanding, the role changes and kind of what we've lost, which a lot of people don't understand. There's so much more to a good team than just good players. Mm-hmm. And that's what some of those older guys brought, and that's what we've lost with them. But I do think, we're 5 games in, and we're off to a slow start, but we're hopefully starting to build more and more trust and more of understanding of what our identity is, as a team.
In a team sport, how do you sort of balance your own sort of on-the-field success with the team's sort of sluggish start?
Yeah, it's tough because I just think, growing up playing this team sport the whole time, it's if I score 2 goals and we walk away losing 3-2, I'm leaving really unhappy still,
right.
And so that's kind of been the struggle here, is just figuring out how, once we're successful as a team, we're all going to be leaving feeling successful. Mm-hmm. And I think getting that part down, and that's when goals are going to start coming. That's when some of these guys, all of us are going to start playing at our best soccer, because all of us are on the same page. And I think that's when people's stats start looking better, and whatever people are getting awards, whatever it might be, is when we all get on the same page.
I would think it's kind of tough to look at your own success when the team is having a tough go of it, though. Yeah. Like that always seemed like it's got to be a hard thing to balance.
Yeah, I agree. I think the one big picture thing that kind of sometimes when things aren't going well and stuff is understanding that, especially for a lot of us college guys, it's coming back, it's staying fit, it's it's finding that mix between understanding what City is and the depth of what this team is and the community that is involved in this team, and that we're not just playing for ourselves, but then also understanding that in 2 months we're off, and we need to be in the best shape, we need to be feeling healthy, feeling confident. And so finding that balance is, it's a different balance that I think that non-college guys don't have to deal with.
Yeah, no, that's very true. It's a different experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we're going to have a link to the Minneapolis City schedule in the show notes. Your home games are at Augsburg University.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the stadium.
It's like Edor or Nelson
yes,
Field.
That's it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Edor Nelson Field.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. I have a good friend who's a season ticket holder. Took me to a game last year, and it was a blast. The crowd is into it. Fun atmosphere. Soccer balls will go flying onto the highway.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit of everything. So
Yeah.
definitely go check it out. Last couple questions, though, Eli, and we'll let you go. What is your favorite Jewish holiday?
My favorite Jewish holiday is probably Hanukkah, and I don't say that. I think probably 5 years ago I would have said that or even more, just because it's like everyone gets presents, and that seems the most exciting. I think now for me is because, as I said, our family isn't that religiously Jewish, and so for us it's always been. And now that my sister's moved away and is working in New York City, and I'm at school in New Hampshire, and Hanukkah's going on during that, and we're doing lighting the menorah over FaceTime,
Yeah.
and I think that's what brings me so much joy in this holiday. Is it's a way that we're all gonna hop on FaceTime together. We're gonna do it the way we do it. Probably butchering the prayer right before, and that's what I love about it, and it's that type of like family feel and the tradition specifically for us that I love and love every year. Yeah.
And what's your favorite Jewish food?
Probably what I had this morning, which is bagels and lox.
There you go.
I often have, especially when I'm home. And so I don't have it as much at school, but my parents, have it a lot or let me go to Brugger's and get a dozen. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, you can't beat that.
No,
I mean,
you can't.
It's as classic as it gets.
Yeah.
But, well, Eli Goldman, thank you so much for hanging out and chatting with me for a bit. We appreciate it, and best of luck with the rest of the Crow season and the upcoming UNH year.
Thank you very much for having me.
The Who the Folk podcast is part of the Jewfolk Podcast Network, a product of Jewfolk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.